So hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and this is a video about using the OpenAI API to create an app that allows you to complete a text, or that will allow the user to complete a text that will be entered in a simple text input field, and the OpenAI API will then, or the large language model behind it, will then complete this text. And so, for example, you could write something like, please write a story about a C++ programmer that learns to write JavaScript front-end code, and then it will write the story for you. So to create this app, we will use different tools and frameworks or libraries. First, of course, JavaScript for front-end and back-end. And as a server component or framework, we will use AstroJS. And then for the front end, we will use React. But that won't be very complicated because it's just an input field and then an output panel where the completion is shown. So let's start with creating an Astro project. And that's very easy with npm create. So npm create and then Astro. And this will use the create Astro package. And maybe you will be asked to install this package first, but or use this package, download it, and then you get this wizard here with Houston, let's make let's make the web weird. Okay, so first thing we have to do is we have to name the directory. So we name it the same as our project, which will be create a story, simple name. We use the sample files here, which is recommended. We can always delete them. Install dependencies, meaning npm install. Of course, why not? Installing them will take a little bit, depending on your connection speed and stuff like this. Okay, do you plan to write TypeScript? No, not at this point in time. No worries, you can always add it later. Okay, initialize a new Git repository. No, don't need it. And we're finished. Good luck out there, astronaut. Okay, so what has been created is this folder here, create dash story. And inside we have, of course, package.json. We have a source directory, of course, and we have our node modules because everything was already installed during this wizard here. Let's check the source directory. We have components, and here we have later than our React component, and we also we just have one component, I guess, because the front end is not that interesting because it only has an input field and an output panel, and that's more or less it. So one component will suffice, I guess. Then we have layouts, which we won't use, so you can ignore this. And we will have pages, and there we have our HTML. And here we have the extension Astro. It's kind of the HTML pages here, as you can see. This is, okay, so this is a component here. Obviously, this is no HTML standard, but here you have HTML. Here you have card, which is a component, and we will replace that with a React component. Yeah, you can check the page that was created already, and that's very easy too. We change into the directory here, and then npm run dev. So in here we have our URL that has to be entered in the browser. So let's do this. So port is 3001 because I already have a server running at 3000. So 3001 is the next. So welcome to Astro, and this here is the HTML, and this here is these are the components, the card components, the sample code here. Okay, so we have the Astro docs. You can, of course, check the docs to get more information about Astro, but we will delete all of this, or almost all of this here, and put in some of our own code. Okay, so let's start with our OpenAI application, and for this to work we need an OpenAI account, and then you need to create an API key. So please go to platform.openai.com or something like that. And there you can register for an account. And then you can go to API keys. I guess it's in the settings of your account. And then create a new one. And you have to copy this one and then put it in the config file or in the environment file. But we will do this later. But first you need to register an account. Please do that. And then later we will need the API key here. Okay, so let's start with a little bit cleaning up this one here. We won't need the layout and this stuff. So maybe not the style either. We can delete all this. And then we can import our React component here. And here we can have, let's say, a div, and then create a story maybe with an h1. So, and we can test it. Can close this one and see. Okay, so it's working. And the rest of the HTML we can inspect here. So we have HTML, we have the head, which is including 2 scripts, and then we have the body, div, and our h1, create story, and that's it. And now we will create our first component here, so we'll delete this one, and then create a React component. So let's get rid of this card.astro first, and then add a new file. This will be index.jsx, and then we import React. For the moment, I guess let's import use ref maybe, and use state, use memo we don't need. So something like that, and then we do an export default. And we name this app, something like this, and then we return, let's say first a div, and we put that h1 here, the h1 that was here in the index. We put that here, and then we check if it's working. So it's not working. And I expected it because we didn't include the component into the index astro. Okay, so let's do this. Import layout is wrong, so import app from, not layouts, but components. App svelte is not correct. App dot, no, it's not app, it's index.jsx. So that should do the trick, and then we can add it here as a component, but there is something missing here, and we got an error. And how do we do it in Astro? We need to tell Astro that this is a React component, and also that this is rendered on the client. So client : only React. And now let's see, still a problem. Yeah, it's not working because what did we miss? We haven't added the React support in Astro, so that's what we have to do. So I'm canceling this here, and we're inside our create story. So now we can use npm run astro add react, and this will add our React support here to our Astro app. So npm run astro add react, and it asks us if we want to continue, of course. Just to do it, install the dependencies, and now it is also adding this to our config, the astro config mjs. Of course, we want it to work, that's why, and the ts config. Okay, I'm fine with that. Update it also. Okay, so let's see. npm run dev again. Yeah, it's working. Nice. We can check it here, check create story. So we have this Astro island. So here we have our div, which is in the index.astro. And here we have our Astro island, which is the wrapper for the React components and kind of a React root here. And here we have our div, and inside the h1, just like in our React component here. Inside our Astro island, we have this React tree here. Okay, so far so good. Now we can create our UI here. So first our input field, maybe, of course, type text, and before that just put a div and yeah, just call it prompt. So this is our prompt, and the user enters a text or a prompt or a command, something like this. So for example, create a story about whatever, a programmer, and then we need a button, and this button will trigger a request to the server. The server will do a request to the OpenAI API, and then it will return the completion from the language model here. And so we need here a panel, an output panel, and let's use a div here. Okay, so this is the description for our input. We could use a label, of course, which could be much better, but let's leave it like that. We also want to reference here our input, so we use ref here. So const prompt input equals use ref, and we can use that prompt input here in the ref prop. And then if the button is clicked, so we need an onClick handler here. If the button is clicked, then we can do a fetch. So a fetch is asynchronous, so we need an async in front of our arrow function, and then we can do an await here, and then we can fetch, and this will fetch our completion here. Okay, but first we need the prompt. So how can we get the prompt? It's already suggesting here. I'm using Copilot here, and this was the right suggestion here. So this is how we get the prompt. Prompt input dot current dot value is the text that was input here by the user. Okay, so we have the prompt, and we can use it to do the fetch. And once we've returned from the fetch, we have a response here, and the response will be JSON. The story, yeah, that's very nice. Story will be response.json with an await. So this is how we get our story. And then of course we need a use state here. So okay, so it's already suggesting Copilot is great sometimes, sometimes it's not, but in this case it's completely correct. We need a story, and we need a set story here. A use state null, I don't know, maybe not null, maybe undefined is better, or maybe just an empty string is even better. So let's use an empty string here, and then we do a set story with our story that we received from the server, and then the story is output here. So that should work, and to check it, to test it, we could just comment this out and just const story. Let's output the prompt again just to test it. Okay, so let's check if we have any problem here. Of course, we don't have a label for the button. So, but anyway, let's try it. Entering some garbage here, and then we press the very small button and it's working. Okay, so this seems to work, and the button needs a text. Okay, something like that, or let's say send. This is much better. Prompt send, and then the answer will be displayed here. Okay, so what do we need to do? We need a server function, of course, and this is what we add now, and then we can do the fetch with the parameters here. And one more thing we have to do is we have to go into the astro config mjs. Here we have to define output as server to enable server-side rendering so that we can use the query parameters, search parameters. This is a requirement, so please don't forget to do this. Otherwise, we won't be able to get the prompt on the server. And now we will make a subdirectory here, a subfolder here called API. And this will contain, let's call it complete JS. And this will contain our REST handler here. And this REST handler will then call to the OpenAI API and then receive the completion and then send it back to the client here. Okay, so first thing we have to do is install the OpenAI package. So let's open a new terminal here. And don't forget to change into the create story directory, and then we can do npm install OpenAI, and this will install the OpenAI package here. Okay, seems to have worked, and now we can import it here inside our complete.js. Okay, so we have it here, and now we can use it. First, what we have to do is to create a configuration. So configuration is this here. And of course, this is the API key. If you don't have one, please go to your account, your OpenAI account, and then create an API key. This one will be invalid by the time I have uploaded the video. So don't try this one. Please create a new one yourself and then paste it here. And you can also do it via environment. You can do it via a config file, whatever. This is the easiest for me now. So this is not good practice to put it directly here inside your API function or your API module here. So please do it in the environment or maybe in a config file like this one, or make a new one, config.js, and then put it there, or in a JSON file, whatever. So I've put it here to make it easier. And now we have a configuration because we have a new configuration here, configuration coming from OpenAI package. And then we have this configuration. And with this configuration, we can initialize the OpenAI API. And this is how this is done. OpenAI is the result. And then on OpenAI, we can call some of the functions that will give us the completion. For example, complete. We could use this. Okay, so anyway, now we have the OpenAI API object here. We can use a further down. And first we need a handler here. How do you do that in Astro? With this export, and you're exporting a get function. So a function called get. This is an asynchronous function so that we can use await inside. And yeah, if you name it get, then this will be called whenever you call get on this path. So the path is API/complete. This is the path. It's the same path as the complete JS file without the .js. So under pages, pages is the root. So it's slash and then /API complete will call this function here, the get function. You can also have a post and put and delete function, of course. But for our program here, we use the get function, and this will return then the completion. Okay, so we have a request and we have a URL here. So we need to get the search param because we're transmitting the prompt via the search params. We need to get the param here. The param is named MSG. So we will have to fetch something like API/complete (MSG equals) and then our prompt. So, and this prompt we're getting here, so I will maybe, no, let's name it prompt and not MSG. MSG stands for message, but prompt is more explicit here. So we're getting the value of prompt and we can use it here. And let's first just console log it here. Console log prompt. So, or just put a prompt in front of that. Okay, so let's try this. Let's switch back to the index.jsx. Let's get rid of that here. And we use this one here. So we fetch /API complete and then question mark prompt, and then it's already, Copilot is already helping me here with the typing. So we're putting the prompt inside this search param, and then we are awaiting the response, and then we are awaiting the body parsing here with response.json. We could already try it out. Maybe we have some errors, but let's try it. Write a story and then send. So let's see. Okay, we have an error, of course. So what seems to be the problem here? Cannot read properties of undefined. Reading has own property. So what is the problem here? Internal server error. Okay, so problem seems to be that we don't return anything here, so there's no response. So after this console log, we return a response, a new response. This has to be JSON, so we use JSON stringify with an object, which is the answer, maybe story. Yeah, we can be explicit about that, story, and then just returning the prompt for now. So this will be the answer, the stringified version of this object, which is a story, which has a story property, which is the same text that was input by the user. Okay, so status is 200 here, and headers, we have the content type application JSON. Okay, so that should be a little bit better. So, okay, let's try it again. Write a story about a programmer, and we should receive something. Okay, so objects are not valid as React child. Okay, so this is a client problem, and let's check the server. Write a story about a programmer was output here, console log prompt. Okay, that's fine. And we check our network complete, and that is also fine. We have the 200, okay, and we have the preview. This is a JSON object with story, write a story about a programmer. So far, so good. And let's check the client code. So we have index.jsx here, set story. Okay, so this is JSON. We can set this to JSON, okay, but then we have to change this here. It's not story, or we don't set it to story, but we set it to story.story. Okay, so we have to change story, maybe story object, something like that, and then set story to story object.story, and this will be a text, and then this text can be rendered here. That shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so let's try it again. Okay, write a story just like that, send, and okay, so that worked. Very nice. Only thing missing here seems to be the call of the OpenAI API. So OpenAI, the object we have here, the object that is allowing us to access the API here. So let's do it. OpenAI dot, and then we use not complete, because I think complete is deprecated, so we use, let's create chat completion. So this one is the correct function, and we await it because it's asynchronous, of course. So how can we use it? We have to provide an object here, and first thing we have to give the object is the model, and the model is something like GPT Turbo 3.5 Turbo. Let's use this one here, And if you have access to GPT-4, you can also use GPT-4 here, but I'm using GPT-3.5 Turbo and this special version here. I think you don't have to use it anymore because anyway, this will be the same, I guess. So yeah, let's do it like this, because this is the latest version of the model which has function calls in it, but we don't use function calls anyway, so you can use this as a shorter version of the same model, I guess. Okay, so that's it for the model. And then we have to provide a messages array, and this will be simply our prompt. Inside messages you have objects, and here you have role, and the role must be user in this case. And then we have content, which will be the prompt here. So this is the call. So we have to provide messages. It's a chat completion, but despite the name, it can be used to create a completion, a normal completion also. So we just have to provide a single message here, and this is of role user, and the content is simply the prompt of the user. Okay, so we have the response here. So let's call it not response, but maybe API response. And then we can get the completion, which is a little bit hidden inside this object, inside the response. So we can get the completion by using API response, of course, API response, and then data choices, and this is an array, so we use the first choice here, and then inside this we have message, which will be hopefully the completion text. Okay, this should already work, so let's try it out. Write a story about a programmer, and this we send, and let's see what we have. Okay, so we have a response here. Let's check network, the last response here, complete. Okay, so it's an object here. So I guess message is not correct. So message should be message.content, because content will be the actual text, and we cannot render an object on the client, so we need to render a text. So let's try it again. Let's reload the page and then write a story about a programmer, and that should do the trick. Okay, so that's a very long story, but okay, it's a program to create stories, so the story cannot be very short. Okay, and it took some time to create it, but here we have it. Once upon a time in a small town, nestled in the countryside, there lived a talented programmer named Alex, and so on and so on. So, okay, that's a long story. I won't read it completely. So let's try something else. Let's say write a story about a tiny dog living on the moon. Okay, so let's see what it comes up with. So here we have the complete call pending, and of course it takes some time. And here we have the answer, once upon a time. Again, once upon a time. Okay, very nice. Once upon a time in the universe far beyond Earth. In the universe far beyond Earth. Okay, strange. There existed a tiny dog named Luna. Luna, which is I guess the moon. Luna was no ordinary dog. She lived on the moon. Okay. This is the story it came up with, and this seems to work. So this is a complete app, which is not very stylish, of course. You can improve on that. But the main thing is working. It's creating a story. If you enter a prompt, what the story should be about, or you can also, you don't have to create stories. You can also ask questions, I guess. What is the distance between the Earth and the moon. So it's kind of ChatGPT like, but you won't have a chat because we're just sending one message, and that is the user input here, and that took a second or something like that. So it's much faster than the whole story. Of course, the average distance between the Earth and the moon is about 384,400 kilometers. Okay, I guess that's correct. I don't know. Okay, so you can use it to ask questions, you can use it to create stories or whatever, but of course you cannot use it to have a chat with. If you want to chat with the language model, then you have to provide the chat history. So meaning it's not sufficient to have just the one message, but you have to provide all the messages of the user and of the language model of the assistant inside this array, and then you can have a chat with the model by providing all the history, the chat history here. Okay, so that's it. Our very small AI application to create a story or to ask questions. It's not like ChatGPT because you cannot chat with it. You just send a message, a prompt to the language model, and the language model will complete the message. So maybe it will answer like this here, the question, the distance between the Earth and the moon, or maybe it will do what you told it, for example, create or write a story, come up with a program, maybe a JavaScript program, C++ program, whatever, C#. We can try this. Create a C# function to calculate the sum of two integers, which is very simple. That shouldn't be a problem. And let's see what it answers here. Okay, here's an example of a simple C program. Okay, it's not a C# program. So it's a C program. Okay, hello world. Okay, so obviously that didn't work so well. It's a C program and it doesn't calculate the sum. So anyway, you can have something like this. Maybe you need to tell it a little bit more, or maybe this was not precise enough. Maybe we can try C++ or create a Rust function maybe. Let's try this. Maybe this will work better. Here's an example of a Rust function. Okay, so it's a Rust function, very good. I calculate the sum of two integers, so that's better. Rust fn calculate sum. Okay, so this seems to be okay. And this function AB, and then the explanation for the code. Okay, so that worked. Obviously, you can use it for a simple prompt and then the answer. And for a chat, you have to implement the chat history, and each time you call this create chat completion, you have to provide all the messages in the chat history. Okay, so that's it for this application. Very simple, and but you can already use AI in your application, and this is great, I think. And thank you for watching this. If you like this video, please subscribe, give me a like, and see you maybe in the next video.